What's up, everybody? This is Cam Jennings coming at you on behalf of EpicConversions.com. And today I want to talk to you guys about holes in content. I heard somebody say this. I can't remember who. I wish I could, but basically they said that if you dig deep enough, you're going to find holes in all content. All content has holes. Right? And essentially what they were saying was that you're going to find exceptions to every piece of advice. You're going to find, nuances that make that piece of advice not true. There's always going to be the opposite viewpoint if you look hard enough with content. Now, does that mean that content is not true? No, it doesn't mean the content's not true. It just means that a lot of advice, aka content, has nuance to it. It's not so in your face, It's not like black and white, like the ways of a Sith or something, Star Wars. It's not always so black and white. It has nuance to it. You have to consider it through that scope. But let me give you 3 examples of what I'm talking about here. Now, I'm just tongue-in-cheek here, guys. I'm on a walk here, so I haven't wrote anything down. So let me do my best. All right, so the first one, I remember where this comes from. This is an old Earl Nightingale recording. But his advice was, just look around your market. Whatever you see everyone else doing, you do the opposite. Right? Like, that sounds like good advice, when you just think about it on a surface level, because it's teaching you to think differently. It's teaching you to kind of be outside the box, to be contrarian, to stand out. And that's the spirit that it was meant. However, when you're first getting started and you don't know anything about anything, how does it make any sense to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing in your market? You're looking around your market, you're seeing plenty of successful people. Obviously, they know what they're doing more than you do. Well, how does that make sense to do the opposite of what they're doing? On a very literal level, it doesn't. I mean, the bottom line is you have to trust somebody. You have to follow somebody's lead who knows what they're doing better than you do. You have to then find a way to filter that through your own experience as you gain it and make it your own, in my opinion. But you just, blindly do the opposite of what everyone else is doing, even when you don't know anything. That literally makes no sense. So that advice of just do the opposite of whatever your market's doing, that can be misconstrued. It can be taken out of context. It can be taken literally outside the spirit of what it was meant to be taken. Very easy to go off the rails with that piece of advice. Because ultimately, and at the heart of it, it's just impossible to do that. You can't go against everybody. Go against everybody and, pretty soon you're going to be doing nothing that works. Just in the interest of going against everybody. Just in the interest of doing everything differently than everybody else. You're literally now going to be doing nothing that works. So that's a hole in a really good piece of content. A really good piece of advice. We just poked a giant hole in it. All right, what's the second one? Problem before product. Piece of advice you'll hear people saying, hey, identify a problem in your market before you create a product. Don't try to create a product and then chase some audience. It's good advice. Makes sense. Yeah, the problem is I really don't know a lot of people who aren't already entrenched in a niche before they create a product. I mean, think about it. How many people in the online space do you know who decide to create a product one day out of nowhere and they're not already firmly entrenched in a market? You know, just out of the blue. They just wake up one day and decide, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to create a weight loss product just out of nowhere without already being firmly entrenched in weight loss in some way, shape, or form. I just don't think that happens very often, you know? Now, if we go to the physical realm, and that's probably where this advice came from, ultimately, direct response, physical products. It's probably where this advice comes from. And somewhere along the lines, it got lost in translation. But in the physical world, sure, people wake up one day and have like an idea to create something, you know? They invent like, you know, who knows, bottle cap opener or something, you know? And whatever, maybe it happens in that way. But when we're talking about like online stuff, I don't know a lot of people who aren't already entrenched in a market, entrenched in a niche, who creating products is hard, man. Creating products takes time and effort and energy. You know, most people who have decided to create a product are already entrenched in a niche. So they already know, like if you're entrenched in a niche, you already know the problems of that niche. You already know the basic problems of that niche. And when you create the product, you think you're addressing one of those problems, you know? Now, it could be argued, like if you're a newbie, you're not addressing one of the problems. You're trying to address a problem, but you don't know what you're talking about. You're too new, you know? You think you see a problem, but really there's not really a problem, or there's a reason why that's not being done or whatever. There's all these different like things that could go wrong when you're kind of new. But the basic advice, you know, problem before product is smart, right? It's good advice, you know. Like I said, when I shoot a hole in that one, the basic hole is that most people are already entrenched in their niche. They already feel like they know the problems of their niche. A lot of people do. I don't know a lot of people who create products without knowing a perceived problem in their niche, you know. They feel like they know a problem in their niche. That's why they're creating that product. So again, the spirit of that advice is sound. It's good advice, you know. You should have a problem before you create a product. You should find a starving market of people before you create a product to serve that starving market of people. Of course, obviously. Like I said, the thing is, most people feel like they have, you know, a bunch of people who want something when they create something. I don't know a lot of people who don't do that. So again, you know, you could take, and also another hole you can shoot in that is when they say problem before products, there's all kinds of products throughout history that we can point to, you know, including the iPad, you know, including the telephone, including a slew of other products that I could name for you right now, but I won't just because we got a third one of these to go into. But there's all kinds of products throughout history that no one expressed like desire for that product. No one had an interest in that product. There wasn't a problem. There wasn't a starving market for that product. And if there was a starving market for that product, they didn't know they were a starving market. Like the vision had to be created for them to realize they even wanted that thing. So if you look at it from that lens, it does kind of shoot a hole in that advice of problem before product. But again, the point of this podcast that I'm trying to make to you is there's nuance in every piece of content. You have to take it in the spirit that it was meant. You can always poke holes in content. You can always look at pieces of content like obtusely and not see the nuance of what is being said. Not take it from the spirit which it was meant to be taken. So again, that's the second one. Again, two great pieces of advice, problem before product. It's a great piece of advice. The first one we were talking about, but let me give you a third one. This third piece of advice comes from me, right? I'm sure other people have said it before me. I just am not familiar with anybody else saying it. I had to discover this on my own. So I didn't read this in a book anywhere and start implementing it. I got it from my own experiences. But that piece of advice is buy before sell. And what I meant by that, when I told people buy before sell, what I said was, how can you sell a $100 product if you've never bought a $100 product about X, Y, and Z? How can you sell $1,000 coaching if you've never bought $1,000 coaching about X, Y, and Z? Because if you've never bought $1,000 coaching about X, Y, and Z, that's kind of basically saying that you don't feel like $1,000 coaching is worth it about X, Y, and Z, or you don't think a $100 product is worth it about X, Y, and Z. You wouldn't pay that amount for it, but now you want to try to convince other people to pay that amount for it, and that apprehension, that lack of faith in that price point for that particular product is going to come through in your marketing. It's not going to be as genuine. You literally need to believe that your product is worth what you're charging for it, right? And one of the ways that you can believe your product is worth what you're charging for it is by buying similar products at that price point. So that was the spirit of the advice I was giving. That's the nuance of the advice. But I can shoot holes in that advice too, right? Let's say, I'm a 270-pound man, and I spend 6 months or a year, 12 months, whatever, losing, 100 pounds or whatever. And I get down to 170 pounds or whatever. And at the end of that year, I write a book about how I lost that weight, And that product is 100% based on my own experience. And I don't know that I needed to buy someone else's thing to feel confident selling my thing at that price point, because I'm the one who went through those experiences. I accomplished all those things, and it is possible that I would be aware of the blood, sweat, and tears that I put into that year to be able to understand that my book is worth more than just some book that you get off the shelf or whatever. So you could try to poke holes in that piece of advice. But there's a counter to the counter, because to me, it doesn't really matter about your experience when you do a product or you write a book or whatever. That's not what it's about. It's about pricing, right? Because someone who wrote a book or did a product, okay, all their experience, all their knowledge goes in that product. But then they have to figure out what to price that product, right? So if you're going to sell in a book, what do? The first thing most people are going to do is they're going to get on Amazon and they're going to look and see what all the other books are going for in their market, in their niche. And they see all these other weight loss books for like $15, okay? $10, $15, $5, whatever. So they think, okay, that must be the price of a weight loss book. I guess I'm going to charge $15 for mine, right? That's wrong thinking, right? Your book is worth what you say it's worth, right? It's your experience. It's one of one, right? you lived it for the last year. You're the one who lost all that weight, right? So it doesn't really matter what other people are charging because they don't have the product you have. Just because they both happen to be books, that doesn't mean they're the same thing. A Ferrari and a Honda are both vehicles, but they're not the same thing. They're two different things. So, you know, some might say the Honda's better. I don't know. The point is they're not the same thing. They're both vehicles, but they're not the same thing. And they're not priced the same, are they? They're priced differently. The thing is, it's one of one, right? But this idea of one of one and this idea about how to price your things, that's different than the experience and the hard work and the effort that you put into creating that thing, right? It's a different skill set. It's a different discipline to understand how to price that thing. You price it differently. You're going to have to market it a little bit differently, aren't you? If you want to charge $100 for your book, and everyone else is charging, $5 for their books, well, we know you're going to have to market it a little bit differently, right? You're going to have to make sure you address elephants in the room. One of those elephants is going to be price. You're going to have to find ways to address that, right? Sometimes that's as simple as like just damaging admission, Just say, hey, man, my book's expensive. That's what it is, It's not for everybody. It's expensive. And just throw it out there. That's one way to address it. There's multiple ways you could address the price. But the point is, the skill of addressing the price and the awareness to understand you have to address the elephants in the room, that's another skill set, right? Besides whatever the skill was and the experience that there was for you to write that book or create that product. So anyways, that's the whole thing about, poking holes in content and the nuance of content. Like I just poked a hole in my own advice, but then I countered that poking a hole in my own advice, which I guess I can do that because the advice came from in here in my mind, my own experience, not just something I read. I think regardless of, what content is out there, and this is going too long. I need to get on with it. But I think regardless of the content that's out there, there's going to be, you can poke holes in content. There's always an exception. There's always a loophole. There's always a nuance to everything. But I tell you what, I think, and I'm not saying this isn't a little bit tricky, but I think there's there's something to be said for taking things too literally and not taking things in the spirit of which they were meant. Like right now, I'll tell you another example of this. Right now, there's all these comedians, in the world right now who can't tell jokes because I guess they're just too politically incorrect, and it's affecting them, It's affecting their ability to make a living. It's affecting their ability to be funny, just because they can't be politically incorrect. But like if you think about it, most humor was built on the back of being politically incorrect. That's a big part of humor. So it's kind of a weird thing. But I think humor is a great example of how this is a nuanced thing. It's not meant to be taken literally, right? When a comedian tells a joke about the color of somebody's skin, or if a comedian tells a joke about someone of a different gender, or someone of a different sexual orientation or whatever, that wasn't meant to be taken literally. It was a joke. There's nuance to it, right? I feel like it's the same with content. I feel like it's the same with advice. You really got to try to seek the spirit of where that advice came from. What is the spirit of that advice? Because I tell you what, I can poke a hole in any piece of content. I really can. Now, if you're a newbie, does that mean there's a danger and misinterpreting a piece of advice? Yeah, there is. I mean, I think you can easily take a piece of advice like what Earl Nightingale gave, all those years ago, take a look around your market and whatever you see everyone else doing, do the opposite of that. I think you can easily misinterpret that if you're a newbie, and take it too far, or not see the nuance of it, not get the spirit of the message, and mess up. And I don't know what that is. Maybe that's part of being a newbie. Maybe that's part of like learning, and growing. I feel very much like a newbie right now, to be honest, because I just finished up my first print book launch, and I'm kind of like identifying some of the things that went right, some of the things that went wrong, how I want to do it the next time around. But it's been a long time since I've kind of felt this way, where it's like I'm dealing with things that I don't understand the variables of, what was going to happen until after it was over, and then I can like kind of like examine what just happened on that battlefield or whatever. Whatever. You know what? I'm going on. This is going on too long. Listen, all content has holes. There's nuance to content. You need to seek the spirit in which the content was given. That's all. That's all I got. Hope you guys are doing awesome out there. Oh, and make sure to get over to epicconversions.com. Sign up for my free newsletter. I promise you, I don't give my best content, my best free content especially. I do not give it by random video with my phone while I'm walking. I'll see you guys. Peace.